Good day, everyone. I am Arin Jean Lopez, and I am one of the reporters for today. And we will be talking about community relationship in aquatic ecosystem. We've already known about population and community. So, population are a group of individuals of the same species living in the same area, potentially interacting, while community are a group of populations of different species living in the same area and potentially interacting. So, between these interactions, there are a lot of relationship behind it. So, this will be our topic for today. A symbiotic relationship is one where two different species interact with each other. These interactions create a balance within the ecosystem because at least one of the species is gaining from it, or the other species may also gain from the relationship, be unaffected, or even get harmed from the relationship. Symbiotic relationships are very common in the ocean. No organisms under natural conditions is divorced from all other living things. So this is the reality. We can't deny that we are interconnected and we rely from other organisms. So species interact with each other in one way or the other. There are two specific interactions. First interaction is the intraspecific interaction, which is between the same species living and coexist in the same area. For example, a school of trevally, and the other is the interspecific interaction, which is between different species that coexist in an ecosystem. There are two different interspecific interactions, the positive interactions and the negative interactions, which will be discussed further. Positive interactions. Positive interactions are cooperative relationships between species that result in better growth, reproduction, and survival for at least one species involved in the interaction, without negatively affecting the other species. Positive interactions influence biodiversity by creating alliances between species that allow them to coexist. The benefits of these associations are numerous. They include the provision of food, habitat, and more specialized services such as pollination, dispersal, predator defense, and reduction of physical stress. According to Morin and Stiling, 1999, positive interactions vary in their strength and importance. Some interactions are obligate mutualisms in which species cannot survive without the assistance of their partners. These dependent situations often involve symbiosis, in which species live intimately associated with one another. Living close together facilitates energy transfer and protection. The first positive interaction is commensalism. It is a symbiotic relationship between two organisms of different species in which one derives some benefit while the other is unaffected. One species is at least derives benefit from the association, while the other species are neither benefited nor harmed. Commensal is the species that benefits from the association, may obtain nutrients, shelter, support, and etc. from the host species, which is substantially unaffected. Often, between a large host and a smaller commensal, there are two types of commensal, the ectocommensal and the endocommensal. Ectocommensal are epizooid animals, associated with other animals for the purpose of anchorage and protection. For example, whale and barnacles. The other one is endocommensal. When the commensal is internal, it is called endocommensal. For example, the harmless protozoans in the intestinal tract of a fish. Other examples of commensalism: jellyfish and small fish. The small fish will typically hide inside of the jellyfish stinging tentacles if the stinging does not affect them. The tentacles provide protection for the fish from larger predators. This relationship has no effect on the jellyfish. Another is the whale and barnacles. Barnacles, during their final larval stage, attach the skin of whale. Later on, they secrete a hard calcareous layer, thus fixing them onto the skin of the whale. They get two benefits: food, protection from predators. The other one is the remora fish and shark. Remora fish attach to the bellies of the shark by means of a dorsal fin highly modified to form a sucker. They benefit by getting a free ride when the host moves about. Food scraps of the shark are swept by the remora. Since, in a longer run, we can say that the other host will be unaffected by the commensal, which can be their disadvantage if the commensal will deteriorate its normal living. The second positive interaction is the mutualism. The symbiotic relationship where each of the two different species benefit from each other. It is an obligatory relationship in which mutualist and the host are metabolically dependent on each other. Mutualistic relationship is very specific, where one member of association cannot be replaced by another species. Mutualism requires close physical contact between interacting organisms. Relationship of mutualism allows organisms to exist in habitat that could not be occupied by either species alone. Mutualistic relationship between organisms allow them to act as a single organism. For example, coral and zooxanthellae. Zooxanthellae are photosynthetic algae that live inside the coral's tissues. The corals provide the zooxanthellae protection, and in return, they produce oxygen to help the corals remove waste. Another is spider crabs and algae. This relationship benefits both of these species because of the greenish-brown algae lives on the spider's back, which helps the spider crab blend in the shallow areas of the ocean floor where they live. In return, the alga gets a good place to live. Another is the fish and sea anemones. The fish uses the sea anemone for protection from predators, and they live in them. In return, the fish occasionally feeds the sea anemone, and the fish also protects it from organisms that might try and eat the anemone. Another is the paramecium and chlorella. Paramecium is a protozoa that can host chlorella, a type of algae, within its cytoplasm. The algae chlorella provide the protozoan partner with organism, carbon, and oxygen. In turn, protozoa provide protection, mortality, and carbon dioxide and other growth factors. The presence of chlorella within paramecium helps to survive protozoa in anaerobic condition as long as there is sufficient light. The last positive interaction is cooperation. Cooperation is the process where groups of organisms work or act together for common or mutual benefits. It is commonly defined as any adaptation that has evolved, at least in part, to increase the reproductive success of the actor's social partners. Cooperation in animals appears to occur mostly for direct benefit or between relatives. Spending time and resources assisting a related individual may at first seem destructive to an organism's chance of survival, but is actually beneficial over the long term. Example of this is the Galapagos sea lions, which has a remarkable hunting technique where a bigger male has fine-tuned the maneuver and necessary to hunt large pelagic fish in order to feed his partner. Another example of this is shoaling of fishes. Fish shoal together to defend against predators. If the fish swim in schools, it is less likely any of them will be eaten by a greater fish. Another is the manifestation of cooperation of Christmas Island red crabs. Red crabs travel together towards the shore to reproduce, and in these times, males and females support each other. Cooperation exists not only in animals, but also in plants. In a greenhouse experiment with Opomea huderacea, a climbing plant, results show that kin groups have higher efficiency rates in growth than non-kin groups do. This is expected to rise out of reduced competition within the kin groups. Multi-level selection theory. This suggests that selection operates on more than one level. For example, it may operate at an atomic and molecular level in cells, at the level of the cells in the body, and then again at the whole organism level, the community level, and the species level. Any level which is not competitive with others of the same level will be eliminated, even if the level below is highly competitive. Competitive exclusion principle. Two different species cannot occupy the same niche in the same geographic area. If they do, they will compete with one another for the same food and the other resources. Eventually, one species will out-compete the other.
Good day everyone, my name is Isa Jane Masulong and I'm going to share with you the negative interactions of community relationship in the aquatic environment. So negative interactions encompasses depredation, herbivory, and parasitism. But first, what is negative interactions? It is one of the interacting populations is benefited and the other is harmed. In negative interaction, one population may eat members of the other population, compete for foods, or excrete harmful wasters. Next is a predation. What is predation? A predation is a community relationship in which organisms in one species, called the predator, consume tissues of organisms in another species, called the prey. So in predation, it is a win-win battle wherein one organism kills and consumes another. It is the same with the idea that stated by Dawkins and Krebs. The term they use, a life dinner principle, wherein it set up an evolutionary race between the two species, which is the predator and the prey. In these instances, the prey experience strong selective pressure to evolve better adaptations to avoid nga makaon siya sa predator, and at the same time, ang predator pod ga-capture siya og sufficient food to survive and reproduce. But predators do substantial selective pressure traits para makahunt siya successfully. And the best example of predations is a pelagic fishes, tuna consuming large amount of fish from schools, and a killer whale, a predation on beak whales in the Bremer Sub-Basin, Western Australia. So in predation, it provides energy to prolong the life and promote the production of the predator to the detriment of the prey being consumed. So sa ginaingon na nga ang predator mao siya ang ga-control sa population sa prey species within a particular area, and in this way the prey species won't overpopulate and destroy the habitat. The next is the adaptations to predation. So predator adaptations help them capture prey, and prey adaptations help them avoid the predators. And then a common adaptation in both predator and the prey species is a camouflage or the disguise. And one way of using camouflage is to blend in the background. And the example of this camouflage is a tasseled wobbegong shark lying in wait. So this example shark has a mottled coloration, and the dermal lobes can blend in easily within the ocean bottom. It's patiently waiting a prey to eat, and when a predator chases after a potential prey, the predator is running for its dinner, and the prey is running for its life, of course. And if the predator fails to capture the prey, syempre, gutomon siya, but take note that it will not experience a large decline in fitness as a result of the interaction. But when the predator catches the prey, the captured individual loses any future opportunities to reproduce, of course. And next to adaptation to predation is the automimicry. This type of mimicry that occurs within a single species in which an individual mimics either a different member of its own species or a different part of its own body. As you can see, a example, a four-eyed butterfly fish is an automimic, the pattern on its flank resembling an eye. Basically, automimicry is the one who is we called the prey because it has a different parts of its own body, and mostly they are cryptically colored to make them more difficult to see and for them to avoid being eaten by the predator. And behaviorally, they freeze after detecting the presence of a predator. And next is the herbivory. So herbivory is the consumption of plant material by animals. So the animals that adapted to eat plants is so-called herbivores, and adaptation in both the herbivore and the plant species it eats. In herbivory, to reduce the damage done by herbivores, plants have evolved defenses, including thorns and chemicals. So according to Colley and Baron, scientists have identified thousands of plants' chemical defense compounds, including familiar compounds such as nicotine and the cocaine. So, for example, the mammalian herbivores often use their keen sense of smell to detect bitter compounds, and they preferentially eat younger leaves that contain fewer chemicals. So, in the examples of the herbivory is a dugong eating a seagrass is an example of a mammalian. And the next one example is a parrotfish graze and on the algae on the rocks. Because parrotfishes play significant roles in the herbivore guild by the microalgae, promoting coral settlement and growth, producing sediment by bioeroding carbonate substrates, and preying on the corals. And this herbivore and parrotfish diversity is critical for maintaining ecosystem function because of herbivores differ in sensitivity of the so-called chemical, the morphological, and structural defenses. In increasing the parrotfish and herbivorous fish diversity often results in the increase of the microalgal consumption and of course increase in success of the corals. So next is the parasitism. So parasitism is a one-way relationship in which one party or the parasite depends upon and benefits from the other partner or the so-called host biochemically and physiologically. So in parasitism, an individual organism or the parasite consumes nutrient from the another organism or its host, resulting in a decrease in fitness to the host. And in extreme cases, parasites can cause disease in the host organisms, wherein this situation referred to pathogen. So unlike sa predation, the host in meaning a parasitism is not been immediately killed by the parasite, though it may sicken and die over time. And examples of this parasitism in the parasites found in the ocean would be include the nematodes, leeches, and barnacles. So examples of parasitisms, first is the barnacle picture. A barnacle may root itself within a crab's reproductive system. So though barnacles exist commensally with the whales, but kini nga barnacle is a parasite for the swimming crabs. A barnacle is rooted itself within a crab's reproductive system, while the crab does not die from the interaction, but it will affect its reproductive capabilities and it will greatly diminish. The next example of parasitism is the nematodes. The parasitic nematodes constitute one of the earliest known groups of helminths in fishes, wherein it has a substantial cause that damage to the host. Though the parasitic nematodes can infect almost all the organs in the fish, but majority of the currently known species has been described from the intestine. So most nematodes infect fish as adults, but a large proportion of them occur as a larval stages. So ang mga example ni ini nga maapektuhan sa nematodes sa fishes would be the siganid, grouper, catfish, snakehead, and the goby. Dun saan man yung pagkabalo nga kanang species is affected. So affected fish have emaciated, discolored body surface, and swollen intestine. Kung imo siyang tan-awon nimo ang ihang intestine. So mo na nga imo nga ma-identify nga kana nga specific nga affected nga species andun naa siya nematodes sa ihang specifically sa ihang intestine makita nimo. And so the effect on the host may impair feeding, resulting in emaciation, growth retardation, and of course the mild mortality is expected na nimo. And the last example in the parasitism is the leeches suck out blood from attaching to its host. So a picture shows a leeches attached to the skin of a fish to bite the skin and suck out a quantity of blood. And on feeding, leeches secrete an anticoagulant or the herodine that aids in securing a full blood meal. And that are the examples of parasitism in a fish. And to sum up everything that has been stated so far, the predation, herbivory, and parasitism, it exists along a continuum of severity in terms of extent to which they negatively affect an organism's fitness. Herbivorous, predatory, and parasitic interactions among organisms within a communities regulate population sizes by preventing any of the population from becoming overly abundant. Each type of interactions are essential to maintaining the diversity of organisms that make up an ecological community. Each of these interactions can alter the balance of the food web, and of course, if any of this part would be removed in the part of the web, it can cause or it can give a drastic impact on the community. And that would be all. Thank you. God bless.
Good day everyone. My name is Godwin Bemeledres, the third presenter. This topic includes interaction that either significant of both species or one species. It includes interdirection relationship of organism in ecosystem in different levels. So let's start to amensalism. Association between organism of two different species in which one is inhibited or destroyed and the other is unaffected. So the picture show the Nemo and also the Dercoon. Let's go to modes and amensalism. There are two: the competition and antibiosis. So competition. A large, physical, stronger organism deprives a smaller, weaker or organism for space. And antibiosis. An organism is either damaged or killed by a chemical secretion of another organism. So the picture, the smaller fishes compete with larger fishes for food resources. Both the type of fishes feed phytoplankton and zooplankton found in the water. So for this kind of organism like grouper and traveler fish, the composition of relationship of two. And let's go to neutralism. The relationship between two organisms that do not affect each other. Phenomenon in which two species occurs together but fact do not exact in any measurable way. For example of neutralism. A rainbow trout and dandelions living in mountain valley. And corals are pelagic fishes do live together in the ocean but don't have direct relationship. So for that example, the corals and also the pelagic fishes. So the tuna and also the corals environment have a relationship together. So let's go to proto-cooperation. Ecological interaction in which both participants benefits but which is not obligatory for their survival. Type of survive resources relationship. So for that way, there are some example. Relationship of sea anemone and hermit crab, and the spur-winged plover that using its beak its residual from crocodile teeth. So ganyan. There na sila yung mga relationship give.
Synthesizing our discussion for today. So here is a table that organizes the discussed ecological interactions. So in a row, which shows the effect on species 1 and in column species 2, where we can see where negative and positive or neutral sign be perpendicular with each other. So we can see here that mutualism and cooperation has a plus and plus sign. Hence, the two species involved get a benefit in their relationship. While in commensalism and proto-cooperation, where zero and a positive sign is manifested, meaning only one species benefit in their relationship. Moreover, in predation, herbivory, and parasitism has only negative sign and a positive sign, whereas one species is deteriorated or have been deprived on its living, while the other species has achieved a benefit. And in competition, where negative and negative sign manifest, because in competition, two species will always use the resources and energy. Hence, the species involved will not guarantee a benefit. However, there will be someone species that will manage to surpass the other species. So why are ecological interactions important? Interactions can affect distribution and abundance, and interactions can influence evolution. So, let us think about what are the interactions that can affect distribution, abundance, and evolution of a species or any organism in our environment. Shown is a map and implies how diverse animals in our planet is. So how we thought why animals from each location vary. As we discussed everything in our lesson today, we can infer that because of the adaptations and survival techniques of these animals, they are dragged or adapted on their ecosystem. And as time goes by, as this species will continue to adapt, this will be a continued evolution for them and for us who are players on this ecosystem. And ultimately, ecology is a tale of every organism in our ecosystems, how they survive and manage to reproduce behind every natural and anthropogenic pressure they were in. So this is the anatomy of sustaining organisms niche, survival and reproduction. So a species will not manage to maintain its niche if they fail to survive